Hey, what's up to everybody out there? Welcome to another edition of the Roundtable Talk, and I am your host, C Money. And first off, I just want to say, my hearts and prayers go out to people out there from the effects of Hurricane Ian. I know it's been a couple of weeks or so since I did the show, and Hurricane Ian has passed through. So I want to send my hearts and prayers out to the family members and everybody who's been affected by Hurricane Ian, and I hope everybody is getting back in full recovery because I know a lot of cities and a lot of places have been affected by it. So I'm just giving um, my full support, my hearts and prayers to everyone. If you've lost anybody or if anybody's lost, you know, better days are coming. I know that feeling. I know I've been down that road. Hurricane Andrew, Katrina, you know, been down that road. But let's get right into it. Today I just want to do a regular, simple show. It's basically I want to talk about everything that has left Miami. Miami has changed. I want to talk about the changes in Miami. Basically talking about stores, shopping stores, restaurants, entertainment centers, fun places. Things that have left Miami looking like whoa. You know, I know when you go on YouTube and all these, social media platforms, and they'll tell you things to do in Miami, things to do when you're down here, what's to do with, things to do in South Florida. Basically, it tells you all this stuff about, you can go here, you can do this, you can do that. Basically, they're trying to say Miami is more like a beach type vibe. You can go to the beach, you can do this, you can do that. But back then, Miami used to be a nice place to go family wise. You can be able to go to a nice little family fun center, or you can go, to like a little attraction place and all that. But there's the place it used to be, and then back then they used to have nice little restaurants and stuff. Now Miami is like, what is there to do? I get people all the time saying, what is to do in Miami? Where is the spots? Where is this? Where is that? I say, even the nightclubs. I've did my research on nightclubs. A lot of these bars and nightclubs. Whether if it's a straight nightclub, a gay nightclub, a regular drinking bar, a regular shopping center. It's not the same anymore. If you've seen in my previous episode, I did a video of 163rd Street Mall. 163rd Street Mall used to be the hot spot for people who lived in Opelika and North Miami and all that, and now it's like a ghost town. You know, um, First off, let me do the restaurants. Let me start off with the restaurants. As you know, there are a few restaurants that you can see in the northern part of the United States or in other parts of the United States where you don't see down here in South Florida. One of them is Bojangles. I visited a Bojangles in Tifton, Georgia, in 2019. A friend of mine who used to stay up in Georgia, we ended up at it. Took me to a Bojangles, which used to be a restaurant. Which used to be something similar to Popeyes. That used to be also based in South Florida as well. And then maybe 10 plus years ago, Bojangles just up and deleted itself from the South Florida area. Now, in the northern part of Florida, I believe there is a Bojangles. I'm not for sure. I'm going to do research on that. But as far as I visited Bojangles in Tifton, Georgia, and back in 2019, I'm like, okay, nice. Um, and that's one of the few restaurants where you like, dang, no more restaurants, and I'm like, man, no more Bojangles. Another favorite restaurant of mine, Bojangles was really my one of my favorite restaurants, but it was one of the restaurants that I wanted to pinpoint in here where okay, this is a restaurant that left Florida, left South Florida, whatever. I'm not saying they left Florida, but another restaurant. This is one of my favorite restaurants because I used to like the breakfast. Shoney's. If you don't know what Shoney's is something basically like it's a cross between Denny's and Golden Corral, because Shoney's in the morning they had the breakfast buffet, where you can go. I visited the last Shoney's I visited, and I believe it no longer exists no more because this is now a Florida thing. In 2018, I went to Orlando, and me and my same friend who I told you that I went to um, Bojangles with, we ended up at a Shoney's in Orlando when we visited Universal Studios. And I went to Shoney's, and I was in love with the breakfast spot because on Sundays when I was younger, my family used to always go to Shoney's, and they had one near the airport, which is Miami International Airport. They had a Shoney's over there, and like almost every Sunday, if not every Sunday, it was like every other Sunday or so often on Sundays, me and my family would go to Shoney's, and they would have the breakfast buffet, and that made me fall in love with Shoney's. And now Shoney's have just totally wiped themselves out. But Shoney's, I believe, have wiped themselves out in the Florida area, if I'm not mistaken, because I know the Shoney's that I went to in 2018 no longer exists. Now, I did see recently that there is a Shoney's that sits in the Old Town area. There's a Shoney's restaurant that sits at Old Town in Kissimmee, Florida. If you go to Fun Spot and go to Old Town, which is like a shopping center, there is a Shoney's there. Now, I cannot tell you if that's one of the original Shoney's where they have the breakfast bar and all that, but it is a restaurant called Shoney's. Because I didn't go inside to look, but I did know that there was a Shoney's there. Because when I went in 2018, there was reported two Shoney's in Orlando. Now Shoney's no longer is in Orlando, because if you look at the two locations that they show on Google, it is now temporarily, not temporarily, but I think permanently closed. And I think it was probably due to COVID, if I'm not mistaken, because half these stores that left between 2020 and now, you can't tell if they closed because of COVID or not. And I don't know if that the Shoney's in Orlando actually closed before 2020, because remember when I went to that Shoney's, it was in 2018, and I have not returned to Orlando until June of 2020, and that was well in the middle of the pandemic, because me and my friends have visited in 2020, and that was inside the pandemic. So it's like you can't tell if most of these restaurants that have closed down within 2020 to now, did they close down before the pandemic, or did they close down during the pandemic because of the pandemic, or what reasons it is. Another restaurant that I want to pinpoint is a favorite restaurant of mine, and you've heard me talk about it. They haven't completely obsoleted themselves from South Florida, but there's only one left, and that's Piccadilly's. Piccadilly's was another family favorite of mine, and Piccadilly's is a Sunday favorite because a lot of people who come from church used to go to Piccadilly. There was two located in Miami, in the Hialeah area. There was one located at Westland Mall, and then there was one located further down, 5 minutes away from the other location. There was two in Miami. Now there's only one that exists, which is in Hollywood, Florida, which is in Broward County. It me and my mom goes there only on special occasions, because back then when we went to Piccadilly's, it was more like you go after church. It was a Sunday tradition, not Sunday tradition, but it's like you go on Sundays for a nice cooked meal, because Piccadilly's is like a cafeteria. You go there, you get a hot meal. So now I take my mom there on special occasions, like if it's Mother's Day or if it's a birthday or something like that. We go to Piccadilly's because it's in Hollywood, Florida. For us, it's like now you have to cherish this Piccadilly's. I love Piccadilly's, because this is one of my favorite restaurants. It's a cafeteria. There are several locations in the northern part. My friend did tell me that there is a Piccadilly's in Atlanta, because remember I did visit Atlanta, but I didn't know there was a Piccadilly's in Atlanta. And I was like, oh man, I could have visited Piccadilly in Atlanta, because I like to try restaurants that used to be in South Florida, or if they're in South Florida, I like to try them in several locations. Like if Piccadilly's, if there's Atlanta, I want to try one in Atlanta or Bojangles or whatever. I want to do things like that. Also, it's just that if they don't exist anymore, Well, I did just say that. If they don't exist anymore, I want to try and see how it is compared to, you know, other areas. But that's something that is being one restaurant that I want to try that has not made it to South Florida yet is Zaxby's. And if you don't know what that is, it's basically like, and not only Zaxby's, Carl Jr. and Hardee's. Now, Carl Jr. and Hardee's, they're both the same. There's something like a Arby's, but they're not as popular as Arby's. Now, Arby's is not as popular as they used to be, but I do see Arby's commercials, and they do have Arby's down here. But Carl Jr. and Hardee's, they're not in South Florida. But when you travel, like when I traveled to Atlanta, and the episode when I, back in early July, when I traveled to Atlanta, there was, I believe it was a Hardee's on the road. Because like when traveling by bus, because I travel by bus, I mean, that to me, that's like the safest thing to travel by now, because so many incidents on airplanes and stuff. Because my friends, they travel by plane, and like my friends that I went to Atlanta with, they traveled by plane, but I traveled by bus. um I ended up at a Hardee's. Now, most of the Hardee's, when you see them in the northern part of Florida, you mostly see them at truck stops and gas stations, meaning that you don't see them like at a standalone restaurant like you do McDonald's or Burger King. You mostly see them at truck stops and and like gas stations near like the interstates, near I-95, near um the turnpike, near stuff like that. And that's where I was seeing them, because I did end up eating at a Hardee's. And I believe Hardee's, that's the ones. Carl Jr.'s, I don't know if you see them at truck, but Hardee's is the ones you normally see at truck stops and stuff like that. But I want to try them. What has made it to Miami, and it's only one in Miami because back in a few years, there's two things that was not in Miami back then that has made it to Miami. Number one is Waffle House. And I tried the Waffle House in Atlanta, and I fell in love with it. Now, I was told that the one in Miami is not so good because Waffle House, it starts in the northern part of Broward, and then you get it further, like from the northern Broward area on up to the northern part of Florida, and keep going and keep going. That's where you find the Waffle House. Excuse me. And most of the Waffle Houses, you see them, once again, it's just like Hardee's. You will see them near gas stations and near truck stops and near exits where you could, because when you're going out of town and you see those tall um store signs, like the tall McDonald's signs and the tall waffle, there's a Waffle, and you mostly see them when you're traveling. So basically, there's one that sits in the Miami Gardens, which is a city in Miami, in the Miami-Dade County area. There's one, and another one is Sonic's. Sonic was never a Miami thing. They had one in Fort Lauderdale, which was called Sonic Beach because it sat on Fort Lauderdale Beach. But I think that one doesn't exist anymore. And Sonic was another restaurant where you had to go further up north. Like they have them in Palm Beach, and you have to go further north. But they try. Now I've tried Sonic, the Miami one. It's okay. They call it Sonic Beach. They call the Miami one Sonic Beach, but I'm like, it's not on the beach. It's near the Hard Rock Stadium. It's right across the street from Hard Rock Stadium where the Miami Dolphins play. And I've never tried the Waffle House yet. So I'm like, okay, stuff like that. There's a lot of restaurants that's been that is obsolete from Miami that used to be in Miami. Like Zaxby's is something like Carl's Jr. and Hardee's, but they have not yet made their presence in Miami. There was talk about there was supposed to be one being built in the Liberty City area of Miami, but that was just talk. That was social media talk. But I believe the first Zaxby's is in West Palm Beach, and I've seen it, because I visited, West Palm Beach is where Boone is and everything at. And that brings me to my next, subject. Subject, fun centers. Oh my God! Like back then, you know, there were a lot of places you can go to. There are still some good places you can go to now, but it's not as like back then. Like when I was telling you, Boomers of Dania Beach was the longest go kart track in South Florida area, where you can get on, where boom, where one race around the track was just well enough, because like I told you, when I go to Boomers Boca Raton, you see the video, the track there is not a long track, so you're getting maybe a 5 to 8 minute ride going around the track. But the track that used to be at Dania Beach, if you look up YouTube videos, I'm quite sure there are videos on it, because there's videos about Dania Beach Hurricane. There may, you can see that the track was big enough. It was probably maybe a 10 to 15 minute track ride on the go karts there, and that was one of my favorite spots. I didn't experience Boomers of Dania Beach until I got into my adulthood, but as a kid and as a younger person, I never experienced it. A lot of these places that have gone on, I haven't experienced it as a kid, but when I got into an adult, I started experiencing it, and then that's when they was fading away. Like a lot of the shopping, like a lot of the game rooms. When I used to tell you about the game rooms that exist in the malls, like 163rd, Chimar Aventura, and all of these malls that had game rooms. Back then, it was popular because a lot of the kids, they go to the mall, they go to the game room, and majority of the game rooms used to exist next to a movie theater. Like I know Mall of America, they used to have an AMC, but now they no longer has an AMC because there's a Costco that sits there near where the mall, where the movie theater used to be at. There used to be a game room next door, and I used to go in there and play the video game. Even if I didn't go to the mall for the movie theater, if I just went to the mall for shopping, or if I just go to the mall just to walk around, I would go there for the game room. And it was the same thing with Aventura Mall, and it was the same thing with 163rd, And a lot of these malls obsoleted game rooms. Now they're bringing back the game room experience, but it's more of a highly tech game room. Like, Dolphin Mall has Dave and Buster's. Sawgrass Mills has in the game. There's a lot of these places like Shops at Sunset now. Has Game Time. A lot of these malls are bringing back game room experiences. Like, not like I said. I don't know if Arcade Zone. I've did it in my previous shows. When I did one, they have one at Pembroke Lakes Mall, and they now have one at Aventura Mall. They're bringing back the arcade experience into the malls, which I think is a good thing. But it's not like how they used to be back then. But it's pretty much going well. Grand Prix Racerama, one of my favorite spots. As you know, Boomers of Dania Beach used to be Grand Prix Racerama before they changed the name to Boomers. The first Boomers existed as the one in Boca Raton, because if you Wikipedia Apex Group Parks, and if you also Wikipedia Boomers, the first Boomers was named, the one in Boca Raton was named Boomers. A lot of the Boomers locations became Boomers, but was former named was under different names before it became Boomers. But the first Boomers to be actually called Boomers and was nothing else was the one in Boca Raton. If you look it up, it'll tell you, because it tell you former. Now there was a Grand Prix Racerama that was near that was right next to Mall of the Americas. If you ride down 826 Expressway, which is also the Palm Expressway, you could have seen it from the expressway. What sits there now, in the 2000s, in the early 2000s, they built high-rise apartments and condos there. I've experienced that location one time, and it was a location that I loved because they had two tracks. They had a regular go-kart track where it goes round and around in a circle, and then they had a track where you had to have a license to drive that. It was like maybe like something like the Indy 500 or something like that, or the Daytona 500. They had actual go-karts where you have to helmets and stuff like that or whatever. And I'm like, oh my god, like it was the best experience. But I didn't get on the big one. I got on the small ones because back then I was younger than what I was now. And I only experienced it one time, and I went there with my family and stuff like that. And then they closed down, and I was like, oh my god, this is just bad. Like, real bad. So it was something, you know, that was like, oh, what is there to do? What is there to do? What is there? A lot of places that used to be fun to go to, Zoo Miami still exists. Miami Seaquarium still exists because Zoo Miami used to be back then Miami Metro Zoo. Zoo Miami still exists. Parrot Jungle. I visited the Parrot Jungle once at the old location, which is now Pinecrest Gardens, and I visited Pinecrest Gardens, and I will be doing a show there um, soon because I visited Pinecrest Gardens. But the old Parrot Jungle I visited when I was a little kid, and now it moved to the new location, which is on Watson Island, which is on the expressway going towards the beach. Now they have closed since the pandemic and have not reopened. Now I've been to the Parrot Jungle, but only in the banquet hall for a private event. But I have not been to the actual Jungle Island. Now, from my understanding, it has not reopened yet as Jungle Island, and I don't know if Jungle Island has closed down permanently or because now since it is now 2022 and now the places have opened back up and everything. So I'm like, okay, but I have not still seen talks of it opening back up. So there's things about that. So that's one place that's a question mark. I've never been to Monkey Jungle. There is Monkey Jungle, stuff like that. So I wouldn't know if that is just not. There was a place for everyone to go to in different locations. There was like this place called Action Town. That used to be a family fun center that was in Hialeah. Oh, excuse me. They closed years ago. Dieselland Park. I don't know if I did an episode there, but I will be doing an episode there probably soon. When Dieselland first came to existence, it wasn't Dieselland Park. It was a unlimited pinball gaming place. Cause me and two friends of mine went, and it was like you pay $10 and you get to play unlimited pinball games. And we went there, and it was extraordinary. And we actually went right when it was closing, and this was in the mid 2000s, like 2014, 2015, 2016. During that era, when they actually closed because there was talks of it moving to Orlando because there was also a car museum where you could see cars from different, like the Batman movies, the Back to the Future movies. There was like cars from different movies and like famous cars. They ended up moving that to Orlando, which was called Dieselland Museum. When the pinball location closed, in that same location, they rebuilt a bigger thing and renamed it Dieselland Park, because there is a Dieselland Park in Orlando, and I've seen it. I've just never been to it. And now Dieselland Park is now bigger, and it's more of a largest themed attraction in South Florida. But needless to say, there is a lot of things to do now in South Florida, but there have been, back then it used to be more better, like the club scene, a lot of shopping centers, like when I did my episode at Coconut Grove. Remember when I did a few episodes ago, I did a piece on Coconut Grove, and I showed you Coco Walk. Coco Walk had bars. They had a Wet Willie's, they had a Chili's, they had a lot of things. And now when you look at the Coco Walk now, it looks like, what is this? Back then, they had a music store there, they had a lot of things, and now it doesn't look like much, because now there are changes. The nightlife used to be where you can go out, like downtown Miami. I'll probably do a piece on that in the near future, which will be coming up soon. Back then, there used to be a lot of restaurants, a lot of stores to shop at. Now it doesn't exist anymore. So for Miami, it's like what is there to do in Miami? A lot of people, they look at Miami as, oh yeah, they have a nude beach so you go to Hollow, or they have the beach so you can go walk South Beach. And I always tell people, and they're like, what is there to do to Miami? I say, you can go to the beach, you can go to the mall, you can go out to eat, you can go walking, you can go do a lot of these things. But a lot of these people always say there's nothing really to do in Miami. Like when you go to Orlando, you have tons of things to do in Orlando. You have from the theme parks, from the nightlife, from everything, because everywhere you go in Orlando, whether you going to the Kissimmee Park, the Lake Buena Vista Park, the actual Orlando, it is lots of things to do. And the nightlife, it keeps on going. I've been in the nightlife and it is um, phenomenal. But here in Miami, a lot of things have changed. There's a lot of clubs that have closed before and during and after the pandemic. Well, really not after the pandemic, but I call this after the pandemic because we're phasing out. There are a lot of restaurants that have closed down, and some of them have closed because of the pandemic. Some of them have closed because they have removed their presence from the South Florida area, like Bojangles, and of course Piccadilly's, and there are some restaurants that have not made their presence into South Florida. Zaxby's, there's a lot of restaurants that Carl's Jr., Hardee's, you know, but I believe Hardee's was in South Florida, because Hardee's is like another Arby's, but I believe Hardee's was in South Florida. They just, their presence got taken away, and a lot of these fun centers, a lot of these places. If you have any place that you remember in your neighborhood or in your city that doesn't exist anymore, but it exists in other areas, let us know. Email me roundtable00@yahoo.com, and if you know any places, if you're here in South Florida, if you know any places that did exist and that doesn't exist anymore that you would love, email me as well too. A lot of supermarkets like Extra, there used to be a supermarket called Extra. They doesn't exist anymore. Albertsons was another supermarket that don't exist anymore. I don't know if they exist in other cities and states, but down here they don't exist anymore. I visited a Piggly Wiggly in Georgia. I don't know if Piggly Wiggly existed in South Florida, but that's one of the things, that, I've never, knew about it, but they only exist in certain parts of the United States. Like, I know in Georgia, I know there's Piggly Wigglies, because that's like a country type supermarket and stuff like that. There's a lot of these places that you don't see in your city, but you'll see in other areas. You'll be like, why they don't have this down here? Like Dollar General. Like, Dollar General was not a Miami-based dollar store, and they only had one in existence in Miami. Like, it was only one. Now they're popping up like clockworks. They're building one all over Miami, and it was the same thing for 7-Eleven, because in certain parts of Miami, it was only like, you could only see one 7-Eleven, and as you went further up north, that's when all the 7-Elevens started popping up. Now they have 7-Elevens all over Miami, and most majority of the 7-Elevens, like 95% of the 7-Elevens, are gas stations. So it's like a lot of these things that didn't exist back then in South Florida exist now, and then a lot of the things that did exist in South Florida back then doesn't exist now. So it's like reverse, reverse, reverse. So it's like, how do you enjoy South Florida when things that you used to love back then has been taken away from you, or things that you want to experience in Miami is not there? Like Waffle House, there's only one Waffle House. I feel they should build more Waffle Houses. There's only one Piccadilly's. I mean, there should be more Piccadilly's. Even though you took half of a mile, I think there should be more Sonics. There should be more of this. There should be more of that. I don't think that they should have took. When Boomers closed in Dania Beach, they said the last final day of Boomers, you waited for 2 hours to get on the go-karts, and that was one of the hot spots. And Dania Beach Hurricane, they closed before Boomers even closed. They closed like years before Boomers closed, because it was the first wooden roller coaster in Florida existence. Because now there's a wooden roller coaster in Orlando called Mind Blower at Fun Spot, which will be which you'll probably see in a future video. And the only roller coaster that exists in South Florida now is at an amusement park called Uncle Bernie's. And if you've seen my Swap Shop episode, you saw the roller coaster, and it's a kiddie roller coaster. That's the only roller coaster that exists in the South Florida area. But Dania Beach Hurricane was the roller coaster that existed in South Florida. And it was the only roller coaster, and it was the only wooden roller coaster that existed in Florida, and it was the only roller coaster existed in South Florida. And they closed way before Boomers closed, and it was a sad, sad occasion. If you go on YouTube, you'll see a whole bunch of videos of about Dania Beach Hurricane. You'll see videos of them riding it and everything, and then you'll also see videos of them tearing it down. And there's not too many videos of Boomers Dania Beach, but they did put a movie theater over there. There's a shopping center called Dania Point, and in Dania Point there's a bowling alley called Bolero, which I really don't care for that bowling alley because they have two locations here in South Florida. They have one at Dolphin Mall and one at Dania Point. The one at Dolphin Mall has laser tag. The one at Dolphin Mall now has video games because they didn't have video games at the one at Dolphin Mall because they was right across the hall. If you've seen my Dolphin Mall video, they're right across the hall from Dave & Buster's. But I visited recently and they does have a couple of games in there. They have laser tag at the one at Dolphin Mall. They don't have laser tag at the one at Dania Point. And now they built the movie theater there as well too. I say y'all could have built like a kid-friendly attraction there, even though across the street at Oakwood Plaza there's a Dave & Buster's there. But y'all could have built kid like something similar to Boomers there at Dania Point, where they could at least had another something similar to Boomers there, because you took away the best thing that South Florida had. Now, if you know anything that did exist that don't exist now, and it was something that you can cherish forever, email me, roundtable00@yahoo.com. Also, you can comment at the bottom of this page. If you know a childhood favorite place like myself, it was Boomers and Shoney's and Piccadilly's, that doesn't exist, and you wish that it existed again. Or if you know something that in your area that didn't exist as a little kid, but now it exists in your area, comment at the bottom of this page. You can also email me. This is one of the pages. There's a lot more places that's not coming to my head right now that did exist, and they are not coming in my head. I'm like, oh, I remember this place and I remember this place, but I'll probably mention them in the near future episode. This is the Roundtable Talk. I'm your host, C Money. Thank you for watching this episode. Don't forget to check out my other episodes. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel and comment on any episodes that seems interesting to you. I love you. Stay safe, stay blessed, and I'll see you in the next episode.